Okay, so today I'm going to talk about something that's a little bit off on a tangent. It does actually fit into the game world, but this is something that's very close to my heart. So my humble beginnings were in product design, and so I'm here to talk about a project called Wildbase, which is a bird sanctuary, and the games that I've designed within that. Okay, so this talk discusses serious games. Hang on, he's got... Can you move the... Slide it over so I can see everything. No, because you've got Angus right in the middle. That central bar, slide it over. And then that central bar between the slides, yep, slide that one over. Vertical, yep, slide it. Thanks. Choice. Slide it up so we can see the whole lot. Choice. Thank you. Okay, cool. All right, let's go. So this talk discusses serious game design for location-based experiences, specifically the design development of 3 tangible, digital, and hybrid games for the Central Energy Trust Wildbase Recovery Centre in Palmerston North. So the 3 games were designed in consultation with Massey University vets, the Department of Conservation, to provide an authentic and scientific and accurate experience of the process, while also enabling a playful engagement to the players. So designing environmental games that will be played in a physical space can be really challenging, both in terms of player engagement, but also balancing the needs for both the players and the observers, and also the need for scientific accuracy within the gameplay. So it's awesome when your tangible games are super popular with the public, but this can pose a real challenge to design tangibles that can stand up to the rigorous play of physical play, and how to actually design for easy fabrication upgrades. Okay, so the 3 games that I'm going to be talking about, we designed a couple of different games, but I'm going to be talking about 3 games in particular. So the Wildbase Recovery Centre is made up of specifically designed recovery aviaries, a treatment room for wildlife care, and the interactive PowerCo Education Centre. So stories of Wildbase patients are told throughout the centre, giving an in-depth look into the native animals of Aotearoa, predominantly birds, but the struggles they face, their significance to Māori, and the passionate people who work to save them. So all the displays are bilingual, with stories in both te reo and in Māori, te reo Māori and in English, and all of our games are also bilingual as well. So the Education Centre includes 6 digital and tangible games, and they're located in the activity centre space and the activity tables. And so these 3 tables focus on vets in action, Department of Conservation, and vets working together, and conservation within the community. Okay, so this project could never be brought to fruition without my fabulous team, who can't be here. So the team is a combination of product design, students and graduates, illustrators, concept designers, programmers, and toy designers. And so these were the core people that worked on the project for Wildbase. So Wildbase took about 7 years to come to fruition, but the actual design, fabrication, and build took place over about 15 months. Okay, so designing environmental games that are to be played in physical space can be really challenging. And so there are a couple of things that we need to kind of think about when we're actually designing these games. So one of the first challenges we face with this particular game called Diagnose Me, this one is basically the problem we faced with this one was how to show authentic scientific complexity within the game while not overcooking the design so that it remained really fun and playable. And so this particular game posed that really, really curly challenge. So the Diagnose Me game iPad game was built in Rempe as a visual puzzle game. So I don't know if anyone's built anything in Rempe before. It's more of like a text-based interactive narrative game. And we'd used it for one of our other games, and we thought, well, that's cool. We already know how to use this. We'll use it for this particular game. We were using iPads within the space. We'd already CNC machined all of the tabletops so that the iPads would fit. And then they changed the porting of Rempe to a public space, and so it wouldn't work on Apple. It would only work on Android, and at that point we couldn't recut the glass for the tables, so we had to have a really interesting workaround, so our programmer was able to resolve that, so we're actually able to run it on Apple. And there are lots of reasons for why we chose Apple as well, because once everything was actually in the table, it was trickier to get it out. Like, you could open everything up, but it was just to try and make it easier for people in the education space to be able to take things out to charge them and kind of update the software that was required. So that was sort of the behind the scenes problems. But when designing the game, the players are basically presented with 5 very sick birds to diagnose. And using a variety of analytical tests, players build on an understanding of veterinary diagnostics. and they learn to use the equipment through sequential exploration, and they learn why each test is really important. And I don't know if any of you know vets, but this is really complex stuff. This is really, really intense scientific kind of processes, and using this equipment and reading the diagnostics. And they were really emphatic that needed to be shown in all of the games. And so the game was to use clickable illustrations and animated loops to guide children through the process. But the challenge that we found with this was it was incredibly text heavy. And it was felt that it was really crucial to explain all of the details. So the first iteration, that's not showing up there, basically involved heavy text-based command systems. So kids would read through various sort of diagnostic analysis, and then they would make a yes-no decision as to which way they would go. And we found after very, very quick playtesting that this really wasn't going to work. It also aged out the age of our target audience. So a lot of the kids that are coming in a primary school age, some of them are really interested in the sciences, but not interested enough to go down that road. And so the second iteration, we wanted to make this far more visual. And so we did a reskin, which was a visual representation of the lab, where the child could be curious about what all the machines were. So we kind of flipped the design away from necessarily about being bird focused and more about being lab focused. And so in the final iteration, just here, they were presented with a visual of what the lab was and the sick bird in the front, and then you'd click each of the machines to work out what they were doing. It would run you through a diagnostic test that was specific to that particular bird. Some machines weren't required for some of the, like they would spit out a result that didn't actually give you anything that added to the gameplay, but that was part of the process that you have to run through all of the diagnostics. And after children had run through all the different birds, they started to build an understanding and a mapping of what each machine did. So it enabled them to explore a lot more. But one of the really sad things is in wild base, a lot of the birds don't survive. And part of wild base is that all birds need to go back out into the society, into the forest, as fully functioning members of society, and they need to be healed and healthy. And so some of them do die or have to be euthanized, and we wanted to make that part of the gameplay as well. So of the 5 birds, 2 of them don't make it. And so we spent a lot of time considering how we would respectively show the birds in death, and so using illustration, but also using empowering messages that let children know that they did everything that they possibly could, and that their work was never in vain, that all of this adds to the wider body of research that goes into how we actually understand the various illnesses that these birds face. So a lot of the illnesses are repetitive. There's a lot of data on the types of illnesses for particular species that come into wild base. So they're starting to build a map of this. Okay, so the second game is called Track My Kiwi, and this is an RFID activated treasure hunt game where children use the model of a telemetry tracker to find birds hidden within the education centre. So players point the console in any direction to start, and they listen to the beep, and depending on how fast or how slow, or whether it beeps at all, it lets them know whether they're hot or cold. And they're able to continuously scan the location until they get a reading, and then they start following that. So the design was manufactured using 3D printed parts and off-the-shelf cat tracking devices. We use one called TabCat. We tried quite a few. That was then fitted into the handheld system. And the TabCat device we found had exactly the same level of ambiguity and simplicity that an actual telemetry system has. So then the tracked bird avatars have suction cups on the back of them, and they're just acrylic, so it means that you can stick them on virtually anything all around the space. So the activity centre workers can move these things around and hide them. And so the console maps a telemetry system used by Department of Conservation. So part of the research for the project is I serendipitously ended up on Anchor Island with Doc tracking birds for a while, and this is a telemetry system in action. And you basically, the rule of thumb is you climb to the top of the biggest hill, which usually takes you several hours, and you scan around and it pings, and then you go down into the valley, and then you realize the bird's actually on the other valley, and you have to go up the hill again and then go back down again. So we wanted to kind of simulate this in wild base. It was a little bit challenging with health and safety and all that, but that'll be like the next level. But basically, all you've got is you've got a little device in your hand that just basically beeps. You can hear the pings, and it kind of gives you some coordinates, but it's really, really rudimentary. So we wanted to bring that into the console system. And I cannot advocate more for field research in order to, if you're building a game and it's about something that's actually a real process or practice, go out and live it, make it a lived experience. It makes it so much easier to understand the nuances of your design. Okay, and the kids loved this. I mean, part of it was kind of counter what there's a quiet space in the aviaries where we wanted to, like, birds are rehabilitating and don't want to make too much noise, but in the activity centre they could run around and do whatever they liked, and run around they did. So first of all, they basically grabbed the console and they would charge around the place gleefully, screaming as they were going, and they couldn't hear the beeps. But after a while, they kind of slowed down, and they realized that actually if they worked in tandem, someone could hold the tracker and then the other person would be listening to the beeps and spotting as they were going, and they had a lot more success with that particular mode. So it was really neat to see just within like one play cycle, kids picked that up really, really quickly. And that was one of the other key things with all of these designs, is there was no room for complicated instructions. They literally had to point, click, and go immediately. So you had to have no ambiguity, you had to just leap right into it. Okay, so the third game I'm going to talk about is Be a Vet. This is my favorite game. And this one is based off a combination of operation and that kind of funny, I don't know what it's called, where you try and like pat your head and stroke your tummy at the same time. And so with this particular game, it's all about dexterity and patience and timing. One of the most common patients in hospital is a kiddo, and they hit windows and break their Coracoid Bone, which crushes their lungs. And it can actually be operated on really easily. And so in this particular game, one child plays the anaesthetist, and the other child plays the surgeon. So the anaesthetist has to tap out the heart rate of the bird and keep the beats to the right rhythm. If it goes too high or too low, it errors, and then they have to change out the player. At the same time, they also have to squeeze the bag to be able to inflate the lungs. So they're tapping and squeezing. So that's the tapping and rubbing. And it's actually really quite tricky to get into the rhythm of squeeze, tap, squeeze, tap. Then the other child is the surgeon, and they have to use a little tool to unzip the bird and try and remove the broken coracoid bone and replace it. And so the process with this is that the kids could kind of play it as pairs, other kids would observe, and then if anybody erred in either space, like they buzzed with hitting the metal when they're pulling the bone out, like operation, or they lost the heart rate, they would have to swap with their peers. So it became like a relay race to try and save the kiddo. So we used a lot of found items like little balloon squeezers and things. But this game proved way too popular for its own good, and it flagged a recurring issue with designing tangible games within exhibition spaces. Children are often unsupervised and have not really as much understanding and respect maybe for the limits of physical items and what they can withstand. And so the recurring theme around the world is there's lots of documented cases of children destroying museum exhibitions, and Wild Base was no different. And they get really absorbed with winning the game that they would actually forget they were trying to save the kiddo, and they would literally get the metal tool and they'd be breaking the bones, which is quite horrifying to watch, actually. Anyway, so the first iteration was acrylic, and it all literally sheared, and they stripped everything off. And a lot of this is about budget. Like, we wanted it to be powder coated, it needed to be butty and strong, but budgets, they're like, oh, can you make it cheaper, use cheaper material? And this is what happens, right? So if anyone says make it cheaper, you say, well, it won't last. It'll last you like, I don't know, a month. More money equals longer time of your products working, but they'll still probably get broken in the end. So basically with this game as well, the little metal tool, because it has to buzz, is also attached by a cable that apparently has 14 tons of tensile strength, and the kids still managed to shear through that. And it got to a point where we actually haven't quite worked out how to fix that, so we basically have two versions and we swap them out. So one's always being repaired while the other one gets trashed. It actually ended up being the cheaper way. All right, so cool. So in the 6 months since Wild Base opened, they've had 42,000 visitors and roughly 250 people per day, 45 school groups. That was just in the first 6 months. So these have had some heavy love. So it's a really wonderful opportunity for kids to actually get up close and personal with native birds, but also learn about the roles of people who are working in these spaces. So takeaway message, I guess, for designing these types of games is it's really important that you get the fundamental science right at the start, because it gives you a good platform for the variables that can be easily adapted within the play mechanics. The games need to be simple and easily, port you straight into that space with really quick replicatable actions that have like 1 or 2 steps to learn and a really immediate feedback loop. Otherwise your kids just won't be engaged and they'll just either break it or they'll move on to something else. They get bored and frustrated really, really quickly. The play needs to be really fun and engaging, so you have to be really careful the science doesn't overwhelm the play of the game. And this can become really challenging when you're working with your clients who really fervently believe that every child needs to know everything about how the microscope works, which they probably do, but possibly not when they're 5, maybe, I don't know. So, there's ways you have to working with your client to be able to indicate that. So there's also room to develop further learning material around that. So that was our kind of go-to, like we can make a pamphlet that they can take away and they can put it on the website. So just keep the game as it is. So we really wanted the children to find the games fun and engaging so that they would form these positive memories that would form a basis of their understanding of the space. So if they played it as a vet and they found that really exciting and engaging, then maybe they might want to be a vet when they're older. And lastly, whatever you design, the kids are going to destroy it. It's only a matter of time. So you need a plan and budget for the replacement parts and also the projected life of the game. This also includes being able to communicate design to future contractors and manufacturers, because you might not be with this project forever and everything needs to be remade again. So they need to know how to work to the specifications so the game can continue. And that's me. Thanks, everybody.